Well, welcome to our Q and A videos. So we've gotten some questions from you all via my Instagram page and my Patreon, and we're gonna answer some questions for you. So Danielle is gonna ask the questions that you all submitted, and then any follow-up questions that kind of come from the conversation that we had. So yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. What do you wish people understood more about the Enneagram?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot that I wish people understood about the Enneagram. But I think if I had to pick one thing, it's that the Enneagram is more than just memes or just a personality test. Like I hear a lot of people talking about, oh, I've done the Enneagram, or
I've done it.
Yeah, I've done the Enneagram, or oh, I've taken the Enneagram, like it's a pill or something. And I get where a lot of these people are coming from, that, you know, there is kind of this ethos around it at the moment that it's a personality test, right? It's something that you do once and then it's over. It's a test that you take and then
you learn a few bits of information.
Yeah.
You put it in your back pocket.
Like you've got a stamp.
Yeah.
You got a brand.
You've got some cocktail party banter.
Yeah. So like I know that this number, you know, I'm this number and blah, 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 and that's it. I think first of all, that happens because we already have a framework for that, right? Like Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, DISC,
Cosmo quizzes,
even astrology to some extent.
That is true. At least the way people typically practice astrology or engage with it.
Yeah. You know, we have a framework for, oh, I take this test and it tells me more about myself. Even BuzzFeed quizzes.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like I take this test, it tells me who I am. I look up my birthday and this is what that says about my personality. We have a framework for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
The trouble is the Enneagram is so much more than that. And, well, that might even be the wrong phrasing because the Enneagram is not that at all. You know, we have this kind of framework that we can kind of shove the Enneagram into in that regard.
Yeah.
But the reality is there is no Enneagram test that is
right. Yeah.
Right. And even if there were, I've written a lot about this on my Instagram page, but even if there were an Enneagram test that was 100% effective, or 100% right in telling you your type, the way that you're going about the test is kind of counter to the whole of what the Enneagram is about.
Right.
And I think if there's anything that I wish people understood more about the Enneagram, it's that it's more about self-observation, and it's more about your ability to watch these things happen in real time, right? Like watch your patterns play out.
Yeah.
And from there, learn how to work with them. And, you know, I think one of the first big steps is becoming really curious. Like, is this pattern helpful? Right? Like, are these things that I'm doing, are they appropriate to the situation? Yes, no, maybe. But you can't get to that point if you're not observing yourself. And the whole thing about a test is that you're not observing yourself, right? Like we're trained to take tests in order to get the right answer, to, you know, succeed, to be successful. So a lot of times when we're taking a test, we are, you know, if we're taking an Enneagram test in particular, we're answering as if we want to get the right answer. Now, whether we know it or not.
Yeah. Or we're shouting across the house like, honey, do I do this?
Am I more this or am I more that? Right?
Or, texting your friends. I've literally had people text me during an Enneagram test and be like, what would you say?
Yeah. And I think, you know, this is all kind of stemming from the fact that we don't really have a category for something like this. And so that's why I think it's important for people who use the Enneagram, so people who are using it for personal and spiritual growth and development, and people who are teaching the Enneagram, all of these sorts of people, get really clear that the Enneagram is not just a test you take.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just funny memes and YouTube videos. There is actually a lot of substance beyond kind of your first blush with the system and with the types. There's a lot more available here that when you engage with it in this particular way, you follow the steps, right? There's more that it can offer you. It's not just a check the box and you're done.
Right. It's not just a way to describe yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a way to actually change how you see and respond to the world. Mm-hmm. And we can talk more about that later, but that's really what I wish people knew about the Enneagram.
Right. And if you know that, I mean, if one knows that, if one has an awareness of that, this leads into the other question, because someone asked, how do I let people know that it's so much more? So it sounds like maybe they're aware, but like, how do you like really tell that to people? How do you evangelize about the Enneagram, I suppose, without being pushy?
Yeah.
Which is probably, and I happen to have heard from many people, that this is a tendency.
Yeah.
When we get into the Enneagram at first, our evangelism is super like in your face.
Yeah.
And like we're telling people you gotta do this. Mm-hmm. And that puts people off clearly.
Yeah.
So how do you do it?
Yeah.
How do you make it seem like worthwhile?
Yeah. I think the biggest piece here, and this was a question that was submitted via my Instagram, and I gave a real short, like, I think it might have been 15-second snippet on my story, as far as like the short answer to this question. Mm-hmm. So I'll start there. The short answer to this question is you engage with the Enneagram. You do the work. You put it to work in your life. And then people are gonna wonder what's up, right? Like, I'm always reminded of basically anytime I get asked this question, because I get asked it a lot. Every time I'm asked, I bring up that quote that says, I forget the saint who said it, but essentially he said to his disciples, you know, go and preach the gospel and use words if absolutely necessary. And so I think when we're evangelizing anything, that's a pretty good kind of rubric to use, is that, you know, there has to be something visible and tangible for other people for them to believe it.
It's so true.
Right? The tendency to evangelize, or like prematurely evangelize,
evangelize with words first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have a tendency to do that because when we find something that's really meaningful and impactful for us, it can feel like a deeply vulnerable experience, right? I know so many people, when they first learned and understood their types, it was really life-changing for them.
Yeah.
And in that life-changing, you know, you're having something outside of yourself really show you who you are at your like deepest and darkest, and that's a very vulnerable position to be in. And I think what we're trying to do when we're doing this kind of premature, you know, evangelizing is we're trying to bolster ourselves.
Are we trying to get company?
Yeah, right? Like trying to...
In our misery.
Yeah. Like, oh, it hurts so much. You should do it too.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you know, when you smell the milk carton and it's bad and then you're like, smell this.
It's so like that. That is the truth. Please, everyone find out how terrible you are.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
first of all.
That's normal.
That's normal. But it can also be really off-putting to other people if we haven't undergone the change that we're talking about, right? And this is one of my good friends, Kim Culbertson, shared this quote with me that like only practitioners can be teachers. And I find that so valuable, because really only practitioners can be evangelists, right? Like only practitioners can be teachers, only practitioners can be the people who are really sharing this in a deep and meaningful way, and in a way that actually people are attracted to. So, you know, myself as a teacher, I wouldn't be a good teacher, I wouldn't be a believable teacher or a trustworthy teacher if I wasn't undergoing the process myself. And so that's kind of number one for me on my priorities list, not how am I going to get this workshop together, or is this webinar good enough, or how am I going to advertise these things, how am I going to get more people to engage with what I'm doing. The real number one question for me is, have I done this work? And from there, if you're really earnestly doing the work that the Enneagram invites us into, then people are going to take notice. Maybe even more importantly is, if you're doing this work genuinely and you're engaged in the process and you're actively working with what life is bringing to you in the moment, and people don't notice, then those people aren't going to be interested in what you're selling anyway.
That is true.